Did you know Fallout 4 has an entire above-ground monorail system? It stretches the length of the map and makes absolutely no sense. Buckle up, buckaroo. NV Ranger & Co. Inspection Team 17 has been dispatched into the Commonwealth to investigate this deranged public transportation nightmare that seemed to have been unleashed on the poor folk of Boston. Looks like we have another one of Vault-Tech's cryptic social experiments. Check out this map. Each one of those colored lines represents a distinct line of the monorail. Don't mind the road labeling. The roads don't make enough sense to try and make those make sense. They're rough estimates that we can use for reference. Those of you fortunate enough to have eyeballs will notice that I've essentially just traced parts of the road system. That's because this monorail is attached to the underside of the overpass highways that cover the Commonwealth. This idea of an above-ground, futuristic-looking monorail wasn't entirely new for Bethesda. Fallout 3 also had this monorail system, but as you can see, it had its own set of rails that it ran on, separate from the highways, even if at times they ran parallel to one another. Now the first question is, where does this come from? Is there any real-world counterpart where you have a monorail attached to the bottom of an overpass highway? The answer is no. The inspiration more likely comes from the retro-futuristic imagination similar to something we could find in a magazine like Popular Mechanics from the 1960s. And that completely checks out because Fallout 4 is heavily inspired by the architectural style of Googie, which was popular from the 1940s to the 1960s. That's all well and good, but what's more interesting to me is that the system appears to be about as finished as Fallout 76 on release. It's wildly incomplete and full of pretty funny inconsistencies. It's also odd because of how easy it is to miss that this thing even exists at all in the first place, so let's start with a relevant location some people might already be familiar with near the Garden Terrace in downtown Boston. You were probably too distracted by the Deathclaws who made their home in a high-rise to bother thinking about the sensibilities of the monorail car up here, and that's exactly what Todd wanted. There's a crashed monorail train here. Great, just as it should be shoved in the side of a building after the world ended. But hold up a minute. This rail and road leads to the northwest, the same direction you started your journey in coming from Sanctuary. So where were the stations, the stops, the places to get on and off of the monorail? How did one ride the monorail in the pre-war? Well, let's trace the line back to Lexington and see what we can find. Okay, here we go, zooming along. We're moving. That's odd. The rail goes all the way north to Lexington, and then it just disappears. Some of you are thinking, this ding-dong knows things might be missing if the world got nuked, right? Wrong. Well, I'm sure you're right, but that doesn't apply here. Let me explain. Look at the underside of the highway. This is going to be relevant going forward. We have portions of the highway where it has two support structures under the left and right sides of the road. This is great because it leaves room for the monorail line in the middle. Alternatively, we have portions of the highway that look like this. Central support beams that would interfere with and block the monorail line. They have little holes, but unless pre-war scientists were shooting trains with shrink rays as they passed under, no one was squeezing through these. There is consistency in that when sections of road like this appear with a single central support, rail line won't be found on the underbelly. And here, the rail just vanishes. There is no continuation west beyond the intersection, and no signs of total destruction to explain this abrupt ending either. And remember, our initial goal here was to find a station or something relevant to the monorail line north of the Garden Terrace, but there is no Lexington station. Despite being a dense area with plenty of amenities and reasons for the monorail to drop you off here, it's just excluded from the system. You want to go to the Super Duper Mart here? Too bad. Buy a car, get on a bus, or start pedaling that bike, kid. And what's more odd than excluding Lexington is the fact that the rail line just ends. There's no reason for it to come up here. It would just be sending people this far and then sending them back south. There's nothing up here. There's no way to get off of the monorail in this direction or on. Take a look at the map again. We also have a monorail line running north and south through Lexington, and this time it does pass through Lexington, but again, no station. Want to know the real dirty little secret about this section of the monorail though? It would have been crushing and destroying the cars under it. Just swiping them off the towering overpass and knocking them to their doom. It's far too low and close to the road running under it. Luckily, the impact and subsequent nuclear explosion would have been putting people out of their misery long before they hit the ground. All they had to do to avoid this was have 95 run under 93, but they didn't want to avoid it because it was all a part of Vault-Tec's plans. Following the monorail south of Lexington, the same situation can probably be said for the I90 drivers near the Mass Pike interchange. Everyone's excited to go visit Grandma in Boston until they get T-boned by a flying high-speed monorail. And in between the Mass Pike interchange and Lexington, we have a fallen car, so it appears to have been operational. Where was this taking people? Nowhere. Welcome to the Vault-Tec Carnival Ride of Doom. Passengers were kidnapped, placed on the train, and then the train was lifted up and attached to the rail. After this, it just went up and down with no stations to let people off. Okay, so the Super Copers will write this off as it leads into the glowing sea. There could have been a station there that was melted into radioactive goo. And fair enough, that can't be proven or disproven, but the point remains that this entire stretch of the monorail that goes from the northern border all the way to the south doesn't have a single station we can visit. And if we travel out beyond the glowing sea that we can actually explore, the overpass highway returns to using those central support beams, so the monorail didn't continue beyond the map, it stopped here in the glowing sea. It stops in the south, but the rail line continues beyond the border to the north, way out here where no one would ever see it. So people could come into the Boston area on it, but never get off here. Maybe it was a tour ride for people from distant lands. They came in safe up above and looked down into the chaos that was pre-war Boston. The city must have been some sort of experiment gone wrong and turned into dystopian entertainment like the Hunger Games. Little bonus nitpick for you here where we have our crashed monorail. I found this while gathering additional footage of our crime scenes. If you look closely at this pile of rubble, you'll notice we have one of those single support structures. Remember, this shouldn't be here. The monorail doesn't run on highway with these types of supports, and this stretch of the I-95 that we're on does not use these supports either. We have the double ones everywhere else. It seems to have been a bit of an oversight when they were making this unique pile of rubble with the monorail crash. The fun doesn't end there though, far from it. Now, let's head back to the Garden Terrace. The trains appear to be bi-directional as they have a control car on both ends. So this one can take you north to nowhere in Lexington, as we discussed, and south to somewhere, hopefully. Let's see where it goes. Not far. First of all, if we tried to ride the monorail south of the Garden Terrace, you'd be simultaneously complicit in and victim of domestic terrorism because this monorail would have run face first into this here building. They tried to distract you with the monorail falling off of the rails and hitting a lower portion of the building, but this accident would have happened well before the bombs fell on the initial test run. It's amazing. In our big 2025, you could probably have the entire system simulated in a computer program and find out where issues would occur given the city's layout. But in the simulated retro future of 2077, that was way too much to ask. Instead of testing the trains, they decided to test my patience. There's very clearly not enough room between the monorail and the top of the building. But it's not just the one slip up. Go ahead, I dare you. Follow this rail line and count up the number of times the monorail would have shaved off the roof of a high-rise or dumped someone's ceilings on their heads while they were trying to eat dinner. You don't want to? Fine. Welcome to Sesame Street. We'll count together. 1, here at the Garden Terrace. 2, this building that also just blocks the highway. Good Lord. 3, there's another building right after that. 4, a monorail would never get over this building with the GNN billboard. 5, probably clips this pipe thing. 6, definitely crushing that building. And 7, probably slices this one right after it as well. That's easily 7 structures this single stretch of rail is bursting through like the fucking Kool-Aid Man. What is going on here? Anyway, in the meantime, we actually passed a stop. A station, a place to get on and off. Even better, it's the place you'll need to be going after riding this thing. The hospital. Just kidding, you'd need a morgue. The Mass Bay Medical Center actually has a monorail station. Imagine getting sent through 4 walls and then they deliver you to the hospital. That's unparalleled convenience. Just like the Garden Terrace, I think this is a really cool set piece. It gives us some verticality in the world by using the decaying infrastructure. A monorail that was once supposedly meant to get people back and forth now allows us to go up and down. I love when Fallout does this kind of stuff. Take something we know to be used for one thing, then subtly repurpose it for another, give it new meaning in a new world. It looks like things are making a change for the better. If we slam through some more buildings to the south, we can find another station, and perhaps the easiest one to find in Quincy. So, at the very least, for the residents of Quincy and those going to the hospital, you can get there and leave there. But that's it. On the entire system. Spoiler alert, the monorail system has 2 stations in the whole Commonwealth. 2. We can give them the benefit of the doubt, even though all of us know we shouldn't, and say there might have been a 3rd in the glowing sea. That's it. Regardless, the furthest north you can go, on or off, in the Commonwealth is at the Mass Bay Med Center. That's just insane. Public transportation that's barely public and doesn't transportate. The rail line continues far south into the swamps and well out of bounds. Perhaps it took people to other cities and states where they also couldn't get off. It gets worse though. Route 1 up by the airport. What a great place to put a handy bit of public transportation. People want to go to the airport without their car? Great. People land without a car and then they don't need to get a rental. They can just take the monorail. Even better. Nope. Okay, that's fine. There's a subway station down there. No need. The highway had those central support beams that would block the monorail line anyway. Well, until they don't. And then, suddenly, for no possibly good reason, out of nowhere, up in the north, in the middle of nowhere, far from the airport and any dense urban centers, monorail line. It comes from the far north past the Nakano residence and stops right near the Parsons State Insane Asylum. Perfect, because that's where I'm headed now. Of course, there's no station to actually get on or off the thing though, so I guess this is just another out-of-state, purely scenic transit made for you to gawk into the nut hut while the inmates traipse around the backyard and confuse you for invading aliens. Why, oh why, is there rail line up here? Why? I don't get it. Are they just reusing assets thoughtlessly? No way. That reminds me, we have one more place to go. Well, 2 maybe. Back to the good old black hole that is Lexington, the monorail would have approached from every direction aside from the west. It's not a hiccup or anything, there's just no rail line on that portion of the highway. When it reaches the edge of the map, the road returns to the ground, so it wouldn't have made sense anyway. Not that making sense is a priority, clearly. Now, I've talked about this before in a previous video covering Fallout 4's roads, but it probably explains a lot of what's going on with the highway's underbelly monorail chaos. We have an intersection here to the Nuka World Transit Center, which happens to have a functioning monorail we can ride. We'll get there in a sec. First, look at this intersection of road that gets you to the transit center. It is the only road leading there. Looks like a road, feels like a road, smells like a road, must be a road. We have a problem though. The intersection doesn't allow anyone to turn into the transit center. There are road barriers blocking you from both sides of the road. People who somehow teleported there in the first place can't get on the highway to leave, and people trying to go to Nuka World can't turn into the transit center. There's even a traffic light here, shoved into the center barrier. They had to have seen the issue and just ignored it. I'm losing it. They knew it was an intersection, put a traffic light there, and didn't bother to make a new road asset to place here so it made even a fraction of sense. Of course, Nuka World was added after the game initially released, so they didn't necessarily expect to have to use this road for the transit center, but then they decided to and didn't actually connect them. Taking it a step further, if we clip under the earth, we can see this is just the same overpass highway shoved down into the ground. This would all be clever and fine if it maintained the illusion, but under the slightest amount of inspection, like opening your eyes, it falls apart. And this instance right here is likely the very same thing that's going on with all of those moments of inconsistencies with the rail. It's just reused assets of the overpass highway that look fine at a glance, but end up not making sense. It's made even worse because the monorail line and overpass highways are combined into one, which means you need to account for the highway above and the monorail that needs space below it. They both need to go somewhere, have entry and exit points, but both miserably fail at that. Just to wrap things up in the Commonwealth, the road marked as I-90 exits the map through a tunnel and includes a tunnel in the middle of the map as well, so there's no monorail line on it. There are also no points where the monorail above ground connects to the subway system, despite them appearing nearly identical to one another. Alright, so finally we have the Nuka World monorail that actually works. You just gotta show up and turn it on. You enter underground, so it appears like it might be another subway at first, but then when you exit the other side of the mountain, the rail transitions into an elevated above ground transit. Fun little side note, we exit this tunnel through a sliding door. Now, you'd never see this just from playing normally, but if we no-clip out of the train right here, we can see the sliding door actually seals shut just after the train comes out. The transit center being inaccessible aside, the fact that there is only a single 2-car train running back and forth from Boston to Nuka World seems horrendous. We can find a terminal entry saying the Nuka Express is meant to run every 15 minutes. This means you have to wait a half an hour if you don't get on the train, because it has to go out and then come back. The ultimate theme park experience. Drive a half hour into the boonies, wait a half an hour to ride the transit, wait another half hour in line to get into the actual park, wait a half an hour in line for every ride you'd actually want to ride, then wait a half an hour for the transit to get back to your car, just to find out the transit stopped running at midnight and you missed it. Then explain to your children why you have to sleep in the parking lot tonight. If they just made the rail line a loop, they could put multiple trains on it and have people shipped in and out of Nuka World like it's Amazon Prime for humans. No problem. The truth is, I haven't noticed these inconsistencies and shortcomings until looking for them. Some people do, maybe all of us find a thing here or there, but then our focus is recaptured by the next settlement needing our help. Excluding the Nuka Express, this entire system only has 4 trains and 2 exits. It's mainly comprised of little strips of largely destroyed, barely visible rail. On one hand, it's strange that it's so incomplete and messy, but on the other hand, it's strange that this much of it exists at all. It's one of those aspects of the world design that holds almost no direct relevance to the player. Fallout 4 doesn't hinge on its monorail. I bet in every critique and review of this game over the last decade, you'd be hard-pressed to find a single mention of it. Take it away and it still has the same reception, same Metacritic score, same IGN review, but if you start to strip back everything in that category, the overpass highways, the monorail, the subways, the cars, the waterways, the ocean, the neighborhoods, and so on, the whole game would fall apart. It needs so many things that aren't directly tied to the main quest lines or the central gameplay loop to maintain some illusion that this is a world worth exploring. Alright, Bill, take Patient 17 back to their room, put that extra lock on their door, and do not give them outside time for the rest of the week. I can't have them talking to the aliens around the other patients again. We need them ready for the next wave of experiments.